last time on The Name of This Book is Secret, Cass and Max Zernus had found their way into the pyramid that where they were holding Benjamin Blake, and a secret ceremony to extract his synthesia from him and to discover the secret. And in doing so, they found the journal that the magician Petro had left. They had realized that Dr. L was in fact Luciano, Petro's long-lost sibling, and Miss Mavis was in fact the golden lady that had stolen and separated the two. Cass and Max Ernest had then escaped up to the top of, or up to the inside of the, or out of the, bleh. Let me repeat that for a second. They escaped out of the room that they were being captured, or held captive in, being guarded by Daisy and Owen. Owen, who had kind of let Daisy go see the festivities while he watched the two children, and then ended up helping Cass and Max Ernest, where he brought in some telephone cord and said, hey, excuse me, tie me up with this so that it doesn't look like I let you guys escape. So that was a little bit of a twist there. They also found out that what Miss Mavis and Dr. L had in store for Benjamin Blake was in fact the lobotomy that they were going to do to Max Ernest as well, where they take the brain out in pieces through the nose, and that way they can preserve it and study it more and hopefully have the secret, which nobody knows what the secret is or the answer to the secret. It's just a secret. Now everybody's got to know. But the secret's so secret that it has to stay secret from the secret keepers and the secret finders. It's a bit confusing, but that's, that's how life works sometimes in a book that trolls you. In the last chapter that we read, one of my absolute favorite chapters, and I don't know why, chapter 30, A Message from Above, we found that Cass and Max Ernest had the brilliant idea when they found the Symphony of Smells to take the Symphony of Smells and decipher a code to which they could then revamp into another secret message for Dr. L, making him believe that his long-lost brother, Petro Guillermo, had come back and was calling for him. They took peanut butter and some licorice and some other ingredients and dropped them from the one hole opening in the top of the pyramid down into a giant cauldron fire, which then released the smell into the air and sent the word help to his brother, who then completely just lost his mind with what he was doing, and became pretty much a little boy again, looking for his brother. Miss Mavis was very distraught about the whole thing, and she had left running after Dr. L. Cass and Max Ernest were going to take the rope and lower themselves down the middle of the pyramid, but the rope caught on fire as Cass was halfway down, so she had to quickly maneuver her way and climb her way back up through the top of the pyramid, just as Miss Mavis and Dr. L were starting to climb. So Cass and Max Ernest booked it down the other side and into the pyramid, where they released Benjamin Blake, and because of the rope, the entire did they do that yet? Oh, as far as I remember, they started setting the pyramid up in flames and chaos ensued. So with that, also, this reminds me, underneath your, underneath the chat, you can see the little gold star stickers there. If you want me to take a drink today, my special drink is a tea. It is a nice herbal blended tea. So if you would like to, I mean, I have my water that I drink normally anyway, but the hydrate button lets me drink tea. So feel free to use those stickers. And let me have some tea. Alright, so Chapter 31, Smoke. When they reached the bottom, Dr. L's silhouette was visible at the top of the pyramid. Behind him, smoke and fire spewed out the skylight. Hey, it looks like a volcano after all, said Max Ernest, pointing to the pyramid. Maybe we can turn it in for some extra credit. How about that? He looked back at Cass to see if she would laugh at his joke, but she hadn't heard him. She was staring at Dr. L, who was holding something in his hand. My backpack! You can't worry about that now. We have to run, said Max Ernest, which, when you think about it, was quite reasonable under the circumstances. But the Symphony of Smells is in there. Come on, we have to run, Max repeated with a little more urgency. I know, it's just he'll know it's us. Come on, Max Ernest repeated again, yelling this time. Okay, they're going to hear you. Cass and Max Ernest ran along the edge of the moat until they got to the pyramid's front entrance. The last stragglers were still coming out, and Cass and Max Ernest had to push past them to get inside. By the time they stepped into the altar room, it was empty. Flames had crawled up all the way Cass's rope, as if it was a giant candle wick. The fire was now threatening to engulf the entire pyramid. The smell of sulfur was so strong that it was almost unbearable. The ruckus had finally wakened Benjamin Blake. He stared at the flames in front of him, confused and terror evident in his face. Hey, Ben, try to relax, okay? We're going to get you out of this, Cass said, surprisingly gentle voice. In reply, he mumbled something that sounded like a question, but it was totally undecipherable, or would have been to anybody but Max Ernest. You're inside a pyramid, said Max Ernest, while Cass started unbuckling the straps that bound Benjamin Blake to the altar. Not a real pyramid. Well, kind of a real pyramid. It was a real pyramid shape, but it's not really in Egypt. And not any other place they have pyramids, like Mexico or Peru anyway. The pyramid is on fire, and as you can see, there are people outside that want to suck out your brains. But don't worry about that. We're gonna be fine, Max Ernest concluded in a reassuring tone, as reassuring a tone as he could muster. The last of the straps fell off, and Benjamin fell to the floor. Whatever Dr. L had done to him had left him very weak. Cass and Max Ernest pulled him up with difficulty. When they succeeded in getting him to stand, he mumbled again. What is he saying now? I don't know. Something about mint chip ice cream? We'll get ice cream later. Lots, said Cass to Benjamin. But right now, we have to walk, okay? Fast. Cass and Max Ernest half pushed, half pulled, half carried Benjamin across the tile floor. I know that's 3 halves, which is an impossibility, but so was them getting out of there. When they got close to the entrance, Benjamin started mumbling again and shaking his head. He says we have to stop. There's smoke. We can't go through the door, said Max Ernest. But there's a fire in here, not outside. It's not like that kind of smoke. Gray smoke. The smoke is Miss Mavis? Is that right, Ben? Benjamin not as vigorously as he could in his condition. Then Miss Mavis shouting outside. The pyramid. How could you let them... how could you be such an idiot to fall for such a trick like that? Shut up, or I'll kill you too, right after those wretched kids, Dr. L shouted back. The kids made a beeline for the pyramid's back door. They slammed it shut behind them just as Dr. L and Miss Mavis entered the pyramid. Benjamin said something under his breath. He says, "Phew," said Max Ernest. "Yeah, I know. I got it that time." Through the spy hole, they watched Miss Mavis scanning the room for them. Behind her, Dr. L gripped the backpack, Cass's backpack, as if he was about to tear it apart. "Come on," said Cass, "before they see us." Coughing, the kids ran through the smoke-filled passageway. Lights flickered on and off. "Stay low. That way you don't breathe in so much smoke," Cass instructed. In the library, books were already starting to burn. Tiny pieces of text floated upward as they turned to ash. Portraits of medieval monsters were devoured in flames, and bits of engraved bat wings flew through smoke. It had been the best library of its kind this side of Budapest. Now it would be gone forever, and no one even stopped to look. By the time they managed to get Benjamin outside, Cass and Max Ernest were almost exhausted as he was. Around them, chaos. The whole complex was on fire, and panicked guests were running every which way, ignoring the efforts of the staff to herd them in a single direction. 2 horses, now riderless, reared back and bolted into the smoke. "This way," said Cass in an urgent whisper. "Here, take my hand so we don't get separated." She offered a hand to each Max Ernest and Benjamin, and they all took off together in the direction of the spa's front entrance. With all the commotion, no one seemed particularly concerned to see them zigzagging through the crowd. They passed to her room. Cass pointed to the body laying on the ground beside the door. It was Daisy, gagged and tied in Owen's place. "I bet she was surprised," said Cass admiringly. "Wonder how Owen got out. We tied him up pretty tight." Cass waved. Daisy glared in mute rage as she struggled to free herself. The open gates loomed in front of them. They were seconds away from escape. They heard Daisy yelling, "Stop them! They've got..." Gotta get her accent. "Hey, stop them! They got the boy! Close the gates!" Somewhere, someone obeyed her, and the gates closed. Dozens of angry staff and guests started converging on them. They looked back towards the pyramid. Fire raged. There was no retreat. The frenzied crowd shouted, "Get them! And don't let them go! And throw them into the fire!" And then they heard a shout, the sound of a car engine. The kids braced themselves for the worst. The Midnight Sun limousine was barreling towards them. "What did Benjamin Guillermo's brother say again?" asked Max Ernest. "I mean, when they thought the lions were going to eat them." "Arrivederci," Cass squeezed his hand. The limousine screeched to a stop, missing them by inches. Max, lad, get in, y'all." It took the kids a second to recognize it was Owen leaning out of the window, now speaking in an Irish... that was not Irish at all. In an Irish brogue. And another second to realize they hadn't been caught. They were being offered a ride. Cass and Max Ernest were barely able to get Benjamin into the limousine before Owen started backing up. Nice timing. Aye, so 'twas, said Owen, with a might pass for a mischievous grin. Cass and Max Ernest looked back through the limousine's back window and saw Dr. L and Miss Mavis coming around the side of the pyramid. Stop that limousine! Shouted Miss Mavis. Now! But by the time the fire had jumped from the bridge to the outer buildings, the staff and guests alike were fleeing in all directions. If you don't run after them, I'll cut all of you off. No elixirs for any of you. Nobody heeded her. The limousine crashed through the spa gates. Miss Mavis clenched her fists in frustration. Her perfect skin was stretched so tight it looked like her face might rip in half. Disgusted, Dr. L hurled Cass's backpack into the flames. Inside the limo, Cass wrenched as if it was a part of her that had been tossed into the fire. Owen careened down the dark mountain road at a maniacal speed that certain they were being followed. But gradually, he and the passengers started to relax, and the drive began to feel more like a road trip and less than a prison break. So are you guys gonna keep talking like you're Irish? Said Cass. I just want to know, because if I meet somebody who's speaking German or Rastafarian or something, I want to know it's you. I want to know if maybe it's you. So I'm acting, am I? You think I'm not being a real Irishman? Yeah, pretty much. She's a right clever one, that lass, isn't she? Said Owen, turning to look at the others. Max Ernest nodded and grinning. Owen eyed Benjamin. So that's Benjamin, is it? What's the story then, Ben? You look mad out of it. What drugs did they be giving you back in there? Benjamin groaned incoherently. He says they didn't give him anything, Max Ernest translated. It's just your driving. Said that, did he? No, I was just joking, said Max Ernest. Not funny, said Owen. Well, I thought it was, said Cass, laughing. Really? Said Max Ernest. Cass nodded. Max Ernest grinned happily. How about that? Cass turned to Benjamin. You know what? Mint chocolate chip is my favorite ice cream. We'll get some soon. I promise. Benjamin smiled and nodded off. Even Cass and Max Ernest started to get woozy as the adrenaline of the evening's events wore off. Noting that it had been months since they'd been able to listen to any real music, Owen turned on the radio, blasting hip-hop lyrics that the kids were glad their parents weren't around to hear. With the road as curvy as it was, there was no way they could have seen a vehicle that was more than a few feet ahead of them. With that music at such high decibel level, they couldn't have heard a vehicle either. So, it was almost a miracle when Benjamin sat up in his sleep and screamed in the clearest voice, "Stop!" Owen slammed on his brake, and the limousine skipped to a stop. A few feet in front of them, a pickup truck was parked lengthwise across the narrow road, honking loudly. Who's that? Are they from the... who's that? Are they from the spa? Asked Max Ernest, now wide awake. Well, we're not waiting long enough to find out, are we? Said Owen. Hold on, y'all. Let's hope this limousine likes the bumps. He started backing up. Then, honking was joined by familiar, extremely loud bark. Wait, said Cass. That's Sebastian. Owen braked again, and everybody looked back at the pickup truck. Standing inside the truck was Grandpa Larry and Grandpa Wayne, waving like madmen. Chapter 32, Do-It-Yourself Ending. All right, Chapter 32, Do-It-Yourself Ending. Only bad books have good endings. If a book is any good, its endings are always bad, because you don't want the book to end. More importantly to me anyway, endings are hard to write. You try wrapping up your story, showing how your characters have grown, sewing up the holes in your plot, and underlining them in one single chapter. No, really, try, because I'm not going to do it. I'll give you a hint. Above the theme of this book, it has nothing to do with the value of hard work. It isn't, if at first you don't succeed, try again, or anything honorable and inspiring like that. Oh, and I won't leave you hanging either. There are certain levels of cruelty that even I am not capable of. When you take over this chapter, you should probably rewrite the last... When you probably take over this chapter, you should probably rewrite the last sentence to read, "There are levels of cruelty of which I am not capable of." Teachers don't like it when you end a sentence with prepositions or nouns, like of or in. Then again, you shouldn't be showing this book to any teachers anyway. As writing material, I will always give you a few key ingredients. Things that happened after Cass and Max Ernest were rescued. And that would have to include in the end of this book, if it had an ending. To make it easier for both of us, I'm going to organize materials according to characters involved. When these pages land in your hands, you can rearrange them as you see fit. Owen. Let's get rid of him first. What I would imagine for Owen is a touching little goodbye scene in which he teases the kids about tying him up and says they better be careful because he's going to get them back when they least expect it. Then he would leave with a tip of the hat promising more adventures to come. All of this, don't forget, in an amusing new accent, East Indian, or say Korean. You like that scene? Please use it. But it didn't happen. What really happened is that Owen drove away as soon as he knew the kids were safe and Cass was with her grandparents. He was also so quiet about it that nobody noticed until the limousine was gone. I can't say why he didn't say goodbye. It wasn't very polite, and it hurt Cass's feelings more than she would have cared to admit. Maybe he didn't want to intrude on Cass's moment with her grandfathers, or maybe he didn't choose the right accent. He couldn't choose the right accent for a goodbye, or maybe spies are just like that. The grandfathers. If you don't mind, I'll skip the part in the ending where Sebastian jumps out of Wayne's truck and runs over to Cass, starts licking her face, and where Cass hugs both her grandparents in turn, and then both once, and then both in turn again. And where she says she just knew they would come, and she guesses correctly that Max Ernest's parents told them where to look. And if you don't mind, I'll skip the part where the kids climb into the back of Grandpa Wayne's truck and they start driving down the mountain, and everybody's really tired but really happy. You know all this stuff was going to happen as soon as Cass heard Sebastian's bark. But there is one event that occurred on their way home. Well, really, it was more of a conversation that I'd like to tell you about. Picture an old roadside gas station. Grandpa Wayne was sitting in the driver's seat of his truck, studying the map, while Grandpa Larry was filling the truck with gas. Cass and Max Ernest sat in the back of the truck with Benjamin, who was sleeping next to them on a blanket, so ratty it must have belonged to Sebastian. Sebastian, meanwhile, was standing by the truck's tailgate, sniffing the gasoline in the air like it was a delectable treat. They'd already gone over the events that had transpired at the Midnight Sun 5 or 6 times when Max Ernest looked at Cass and said, "So, I guess my doctors were wrong?" "About what?" said Cass. About how you're just a survivalist because you're being hit by your dad being hit by lightning, and you don't really care about saving people, because you actually did. You saved someone. He pointed to the sleeping Benjamin. "Yeah, I guess so," said Cass, sounding oddly uncertain. Lightning, eh?" asked Grandpa with a raised eyebrow. Apparently he had been listening from the gas pump. "You don't know anything about it," said Cass, her ears turning red. "Well, I know about good stories, and I'm all for them," said Grandpa Larry diplomatically, climbing back into the truck's front cab. Inside the cab, he whispered something in Wayne's ear. Wayne nodded somberly. He started driving the truck back onto the road. "I guess I should tell you, I mean, now that we're alive and everything," said Cass, speaking to Max Ernest, but looking at her grandparents. "I didn't really tell you the whole story about my dad." "You mean there's more? Besides him being hit by lightning?" asked Max Ernest, eyes wide. "Well, I don't really know that he got hit by lightning." Cass hesitated. "Actually, I don't even know if he's dead." "You mean you made up the story?" asked Max Ernest, incredulous. That's a word. "I heard it on TV." Max Ernest stared at her, then broke into a big smile. "So, basically, you lied," he said, as if it were great news. "That cancels out me telling you about my doctor. We're even. How about that?" "You don't have to be so happy about it." "So who's your real dad?" asked Max Ernest for a moment. "I don't know," said Cass matter-of-factly. You don't? Didn't your mother tell you?" Max Ernest couldn't hide his astonishment. Cass shook her head. "Well, didn't you even ask?" "Yeah, when I was little, but she used to just say she would tell me when I got older. Ever since, it's like, I don't know, I'm afraid to ask, like it would hurt her feelings or something." "Well, I think you should ask again." "Leave her alone," said Grandpa Larry, leaning out the back window. "She'll ask when she's ready." "Okay," said Max Ernest. "I was just saying." But he didn't say any more. Cass's mother. As you can imagine, Cass's mother entered a state of extreme anxiety as Cass failed to answer her phone at the usual hour. Proud of her self-control, her mother waited a whole minute before she called Cass's grandfathers to ask where Cass was. When she couldn't get through, she calmly and rationally drove to the airport and screamed at the top of her lungs until she got the first flight home. Late that night, Grandpa Wayne's pickup truck pulled up into the firehouse. A taxi was pulling out. Cass's mother stood in the doorway. Her eyes grew stern when she saw Cass hop out of the back of the truck. "Cassandra, what were you doing in the back of that thing? Do you know how dangerous that is? Not to mention against the law, and you two," she said, pointing at Cass's grandfathers. "You promised." Now, to my mind, Cass's mother getting mad about Cass riding in the back of a truck when Cass had been doing far more dangerous things only a short time before is both funny and realistic. But you may want to leave it out and go immediately to the following. And then Cass's mother, she couldn't help keep it up any longer. She took her daughter in her arms, and she wouldn't let go of her for a half minute. For a half minute. I know that doesn't sound long, but count it out. 1.5 minutes is a very long time. I missed you so much. Me too, said Cass. And then Cass, she couldn't stop herself. She cried for the first time since these adventures began, as if she had been saving up all her tears and now she was spending them all at once. Max Ernest's parents. Max Ernest's parents are minor characters who serve mainly as comic relief. Relief for us, I mean. For Max Ernest, no doubt, they weren't funny at all. Nonetheless, they deserve a mention. When he returned late that night, Max Ernest naturally expected his parents to be full of questions. He started to explain that his parents stopped them. No, don't say anything, said his father. No, not a word, said his mother. A strange thing had happened while Max Ernest was away. His disappearance had brought his parents together. Their concern for their son had made them overcome their differences and agree to split up. Henceforth, they promised that they were going to be a proper divorced parents. They would each have a house separate from the other. You ran away to get a message to us, said his father, and we heard it loud and clear, said his mother. Max Ernest thought it best not to correct them. Amber. There is absolutely no reason to go back to Amber at this late point in our story, but she would get really mad if we didn't. Not that she would say so. As the nicest girl in school, she would probably say it was totally fine. And I mean, I could put it in my... I wouldn't put it in your book either. I take it back. The reason to go back to Amber, if only to report what Cass said next time Amber offered her a smoochie. Cass said, no. A little word. It's true. But for Cass, it was a big deal. Miss Johnson. If Dr. L and Miss Mavis are the true villains in this book, then what is Miss Johnson? If I had to pick, I would say Miss Johnson represents the law. She's like a policeman in the world of our book, the one who makes the rules and punishes you when you break them, which gets us into much closer ending, which gets us much closer to the ending of our ending. By now, readers will be wondering how much Cass and Max Ernest confessed about their trip to the Midnight Sun. The answer is everything and nothing. Oh, they tried. But whenever they described their experiences, reactions ranged from polite skepticism to outright disbelief. You'd think that Benjamin Blake might have been some help. Why would they have shaved his head? Said Cass, if no one had wanted to suck his brains. But other people didn't seem to see it that way. There were plenty of other reasons, they said, like maybe he wanted to look like he was in one of those rock bands, or maybe he had head lice. Frustratingly, Benjamin himself had only the vaguest memories of his ordeal. As far as anyone could tell from his mumbled account, Cass and Max Ernest had taken him on a trip to Egypt, where he sat around a campfire and ate mint chip ice cream. The day Cass and Max Ernest returned, a team of firemen and police investigators went to examine the site of the Midnight Sun. The kids waited hopefully for their report, but the fire had decimated the entire spa. Incredibly, there were no survivors other than the kids, or no survivors willing to identify themselves anyway. It was as if the Midnight Sun had never existed. The investigators would say only they suspected arson. After hearing the police report, people were no longer skeptical about Cass and Max Ernest's stories. They were downright suspicious. In a more emotionally satisfying book than this one, the principal would have wept when Cass returned. She would have apologized for ever doubting Cass, and she would have begged Cass's forgiveness. There would have been some sort of celebratory assembly, and Cass and Max Ernest might even have received medals for the best survivalist and best codebreaker. Say, well, by now you know this book is better than that. And no, I'm not giving any ground on this one. Miss Johnson couldn't prove it, but she was certain that Cass and Max Ernest were responsible for Benjamin Blake's disappearance, rather than his rescue. I won't go into detail about their hours of detention and hard labor because the subject is too infuriating to my sense of justice. Yes, I have a sense of justice, although not always an active one, I admit. If you're a sadist sort, you can flesh out the part about yourself. If you're a sadistic sort, you can flesh out that part for yourself. Otherwise, join me in turning a blind eye to their suffering. Thankfully, after what Cass and Max Ernest had been through, any punishment their principal dished out was comparatively easy to endure. What was harder to endure was that no one in the world believed them. Dr. L. and Miss Mavis. You don't honestly think they'd gone up in flames, do you? I can't tell you much about our villains' actions after our heroes escaped. I don't know how many of their guests they let burn to death, probably most of them, or what awful price they extracted from those they saved, probably a high one. I don't know what sinister alchemical materials they managed to salvage before they ran. Still less I can tell you about their nefarious plans for the future, although I would bet my life that they had them. Creatures like Dr. L and Miss Mavis do not, as a rule, give up after a setback. They vow revenge. What I can tell you with certainty is that they were last seen silhouetted on top of a mountain ridge not far from what was once the midnight sun. They were on horseback. Remember those horses running running loose during the fire? And they had paused to take in a view to say goodbye of their old fortress of a spa. Then, with a cry that echoed for miles, they whipped their horses into a gallop and disappeared over the ridge. Where they were heading, it was too close. Wherever they were heading, it was too close. Whenever they returned, it'll be too soon. Dun dun dun. Chapter 32. Your version. Please write in the back of in black or blue ink. Attach extra pages as needed. So, here's what's going to happen, guys. That last chapter that we read, how do you think it should go? I would actually 100% love to see you guys and what you guys think about that. I'd love to see a small chapter or like a little snippet written about how you think the story should end, because I think that would be kind of cool. If you want to submit them, you can submit them to my email. Let's do it that way. Gets Notepad. I know, right? That girl at that place 114@gmail.com, and I would love to read those. I'd love to get those. If you have them in like a Word document or something, you can tag me in Twitter send a post, tag me in it, put that there. I'd love to read it. You can also message me on Instagram. But probably the best way to get a document or whatnot would be email. So that's thatgirl@thatplace114@gmail.com. In this crazy, crazy, crazy world, no matter what happens, remember, those little goals make big dreams. Bye, guys. Take care. Bye.